Guys, how's it going? False alarm from last video. I'm actually doing great today. I'm pretty sure what happened was that I'd slept in a really bad position for 2 days and that made my neck hurt. And because my neck hurt, the rest of my head hurt. Because I spent the entire day yesterday sitting against a chair with like a headrest, and after a day my neck wasn't hurting anymore and the headache went away too. So I'm glad I'm doing okay. Just gonna try to escape this. Today I have I have a story to tell. It's very important for what happened to me, but it's kind of controversial. In fact, my parents were like, "Don't do this video, Mr. Farkas. This is a bad idea." And I'm like, "But it's important." And they're like, "Okay, but at least leave out some details. You don't have to say everything that happened. You can just talk about the main things and that's it." And I thought about it for a long time. I spent the whole weekend thinking, should I do this, should I do this, should I do this? And I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it because it was pretty emotional, and there was also like an emotional build-up happening, and I feel like I have to transmit that. So I'm gonna take a risk here. I'm gonna say as a warning, if any of you watching are very sensitive to comedy, sarcasm, what you would call racism, because practically everything here is racist by now, everything in the world. If you get easily triggered or easily angered, or any tiny little detail that is misspoken or anything like that, if all of that gets you really angry and ruins your life, I suggest you just click away from this video, and no hard feelings, and no feelings will be hurt, and everyone ends up being happy. Okay? I don't want to offend anyone here. I'm just going to say exactly what went through my mind when certain things happened, which I'm going to talk about, and I want to be as accurate as possible. And those emotions might be offensive to some people, even though it's not my intent to offend anyone, even back then. It's just stuff that happened, and I'm going to be as accurate as possible. So you've been warned. That was my my warning to all of you, cancel culture fanatics. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Okay, you can go away now. So now that it's just us, only the winners are left behind and the losers left the video, I'm gonna tell you what happened. Basically, so remember I said in one of the videos that, like, since everything happens parallel, sometimes the like the things that happen, the timeline gets a bit like messed up. But basically what was happening is I was already like told that I had none of the disease in me anymore, but that we still had to do the transplant, and we were waiting for a suitable donor. Now, I had my mom as a perfectly valid donor, but we had her more as a backup because she was only 50% compatible. So we were still kind of, looking for someone that could be with, between 80 and 100% compatible, which would be, perfect. It would make the transplant process so much easier. So we waited. The doctors asked me, "Are you willing to wait a little longer?" I was like, "Sure. Let's do this the right way. Let's be patient." So we were patient. The problem is that we didn't know how long it was going to take, and if we were even going to find someone. So around New Year's, so this was the end of December, I was at home and I get this phone call from one of the chief transplant doctors, and she's like, "Hey, listen, I've got news. Do you want to come in and talk about how we continue?" And I'm like, "Sure." So we set up a meeting, and I went over to the hospital, and I was like, "What happened? What happened?" My mom was there, and she's like, "We found a donor." And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, we found a donor. You have a donor willing to give you a bone marrow transplant." And I was like, oh my God, the spice. The spice. Finally, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get a healthy bone marrow. And I'm like, where is this donor from? And she's like, I can't give you any details. I'm not going to tell you the name. I'm not going to tell you where the person is right now. And I'm not going to tell you the name or the gender or anything like that. And I was like, that's okay, but like, can you tell me anything? Like, is the person from Hungary? And the doctor kind of like screwed up. And in Spanish, you know, we've got masculine and feminine, and she said él, so it's like I knew it was a guy, and he's like, he is from Israel. That's all I'm gonna say. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like, I'm okay with just knowing that. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it, like an Israelite. And she's like, yes, an Israelite from Israel, a guy from Israel is going to be your donor. Congratulations. And I was like, oh my God, the spice. The spice melange. The good stuff. Finally. And I'm like, wow, so I'm going to have Jewish blood. Because the bone marrow, once it's transplanted, I'm going to have the exact same blood, the same blood type, everything. It's like you compare my blood to the blood from the donor, and it's going to be the exact same blood, completely the same, identical. And I'm like, I'm gonna have Jewish blood. And she's like, yeah, congratulations. They're strong people, and they're like known around the world for donating bone marrow. So like, you got really lucky. And I'm like, but like, what? How? Because from what I know, I don't have any detectable Jewish blood. I did that whole heritage genetics blood thing, and it turns out, like, from what I remember from the results, I didn't have any Israelite blood. And she's like, well, maybe, you know, it's immigrant blood because, you know, from things that happened in the past, possibly an Argentine or Hungarian person went to Israel and met someone who had similar genetics to, I don't know, your father or your mother, and there was like a genetic mix there. I don't know, like, maybe you don't have Jewish blood, but technically you've got the same genetics as someone who lives in Israel. And I'm like, that's amazing. And she's like, congratulations. All we have to do is wait for this guy. I'm gonna call him the Israelite because I don't know his name. Well, I didn't know at the time. Just leave that for later. We don't. So I'm gonna call him the Israelite from now on. Basically, I asked, what does this Israelite have to do, like, to get the bone marrow? Like, we have to wait for him to do what exactly? And she's like, well, I mean, I'll explain it to you. Basically, he has to inject himself with an injection, like a subdermal injection, which you can administer to yourself, really. It's kind of like an insulin shot. It's supposed to be injected into fat. So, you know, you just inject it through the skin into fat. Called filgatrin. This thing, what it does is, in small doses, it's meant to increase your white blood cell count in your blood. And in larger doses, what it does is, it actually makes the bone marrow get out of your bones and flow into the bloodstream. Now, if you take, I think it was 3 shots a day for a week, then a lot of your bone marrow is in your blood, and of course there's no side effects, really. Like, the person doesn't suffer or anything like that, but you know, it's still your bone marrow, and that bone marrow is then extracted by putting a catheter in your neck, just like the one that I had, that goes straight into your heart, and getting sort of like a blood transfusion, but for 4 hours, where they pull the blood out of you through the catheter, and remember, the bone marrow is in the blood. They filter out the bone marrow, and then they put the blood back into you, and they do this filter process for around 4 hours. And depending on how well it went and how much of the bone marrow they have, usually it's 1 day, it's 4 hours 1 day, but sometimes it can take 2 days depending on the patient. But this is the most important part. The donor doesn't lose anything. So it's not like they lost bone marrow forever. That bone marrow regenerates, and within maybe a few weeks, you're already back to how you started, as if nothing had happened. So it's completely safe for the donor. And I'm like, so we're waiting for the Israelite to do this, and I'm like, and the doctor's like, yeah, exactly. we just need the Israelite to do this, and we're all good. So we wait, and the hospital stays in contact with the organization in charge of getting the bone marrow, and they would keep me updated. And I was super happy. I was ready to love thy neighbor with this news. I went to all my friends. I told them, hey, listen, you'll never believe it. I have a donor. And they're like, where is he from? And I'm like, from Israel. And they're like, wow, congratulations. And I'm like, yeah, finally. And I'm going to be one of the chosen people. Giant slayer. I'm going to be a giant slayer. I was so happy. I was telling everyone, finally, I feel so honored. I told them that I was going to go to Israel after this and pay my respects. I got my hopes up. I was like, finally I can let go, and everything's going to be okay, because what is this is the last step, and we have a donor. I remember I was telling all my friends that's it. I'm going to have Jewish blood. So I told them, I'm like, from now on, it's kosher food forever. No more ham and cheese. Don't even talk to me about the Holocaust, because my people have been through enough, I told them. I watched all the movies, Schindler's List, The Boy with the Striped Pajamas. I watched all of them, felt a deeper connection. I truly felt one with the chosen people, with the tribe of Israel. But this is the thing, months were passing. I remember I talked to the doctors, and they're like, well, we still have no news from the Israelite. And I'm like, well, it's taking a little while. And they're like, yeah, you still have to do the chemo. Every month and a half or a month, you have to do chemo. It's very important. But this is the thing, with every chemo session I was doing, waiting for the donation, for the blood donor to send their bone marrow, I was it was getting harder and harder for me to have chemo. Why is this? Because your bone marrow is basically taking a beating every time. So even though there was no disease in my bone marrow, because I was doing chemo all the time, it was harder and harder for me to recuperate my white blood cells, my platelets, and my red blood cells. So basically, just as a comparison, when I first started chemo, after maybe a week, all my cells were back to normal, my white blood cell count was fine, my red blood cell count, everything was fine. But by the time I was waiting for the Israelite to do everything, what happened is that my bone marrow would take way longer to recuperate. So it would take maybe a month for me to have decent levels, and I was already at home, so I had to take extra care not to fall off and hit my head, or I had to wear a mask while I was sleeping sometimes. It was tough, So I was like, oh man, this is getting kind of hard. I hope the guy's okay and can do everything in time. There even came a point where my platelets were so low, they were literally below 10,000. 10,000 is extremely low. Technically I was supposed to be in the hospital with such low platelets. A normal amount would be above 250,000, and I had 10,000. And I had some side effects, for example, I felt my skin ripping in my mouth because there was no blood coagulation. So any sort of, imagine you've got teeth in your mouth, any sort of hit, anytime my tooth would scrape or hit the inner wall of my lips and my cheeks, there would be a bruise, and then I'd feel this bubble of blood forming, and eventually that bubble would burst and I'd feel blood in my mouth. And that was because my blood couldn't clot properly, and so there was no way for my blood to clot in my mouth, and then I'd get these black spots. I felt like extremely dizzy, because blood clotting is important within the body too, not just when you get hurt. So it was getting kind of tough. My white blood cells wouldn't go up. I'd be sleeping, like I said, in my mask. I would have to take really good care of what I ate. We had to clean everything with soap, all the vegetables, everything, and then cook them. Cook them properly, so I don't get sick from bacteria that were on the food. And also I was feeling sort of slow because my red blood cell count was down too. So what I'm saying is, I was practically on my last legs, and eventually there would come a point where they can't give me more chemo without having serious consequences permanently on my health. Like eventually your body just can't take it anymore, and you'll stop making those cells, and you could die, or you could permanently stay in the hospital until the donation comes in, the bone marrow transplant donation thingy. So imagine we're waiting since around November, December. Like I said, I have amnesia with this stuff sometimes, so I can't remember the exact date. But we're waiting, and I remember January passes, and February, and we're already talking about COVID-19, but as a joke. Remember when the virus was a joke? No one was taking it seriously? Well, that was basically around then, at least in Argentina. And I remember I get another phone call, and it's again the same doctor, the transplant leader, and she's like, "Hey, I've got news for you. Can you come into the office?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I was like, oh, why do I have to go into the office? But can you just tell me if everything's gonna be okay? I would like to know. And we go to the office, of course, and I go with my mom, and she's like, "Okay, well, listen, I've got two things to tell you. Number one, very convenient, I'm actually not going to be your doctor anymore." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, I gotta go. I'm going to go to the province of Córdoba, where I get another job. So I have maybe one more meeting with you, and then you're on your own. You gotta meet up with the other doctor, and good luck with that." And I'm like, "Okay, all right, thanks." It's kind of crappy when a doctor abandons you in a thing like this, but it happens. Rotations happen all the time, and maybe it had to do with the coronavirus. I don't know. Point is, she was like, "Okay, now that that's out of the way, the Israelite canceled on you." And I'm like, "What?" "Excuse me, say that again. Where's my spice melange? Excuse me." And she's like, "Yeah, sorry." And I'm like, "Why? What's the reason?" And she's like, "Well, I can't give you a reason." And I'm like, "Come on, like at least tell me why." And she's like, "Well, I can't tell you a reason, okay? That's private. It's personal reasons." And she dropped the ball again, and she's like, "He didn't want to." I'm like, "Why?" "Why didn't he want to?" And she's like, "I don't know, okay? God damn it, I don't know why. But you've got your mom, so we're just gonna go with that." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay. Of course, we'll go with my mom. Thank God we have her." But I wanted to know, because I had got my hopes up. And I told you guys, when you're in a situation like this, don't get your hopes up. You're a dead man walking. I shouldn't have thought about how good it was going to be to have the blood of the chosen people in me. I shouldn't have thought about the spice melange. I shouldn't have thought about eating kosher food and telling all my friends that I was going to be healthy and like the guys from Israel, and I was going to visit Israel. I shouldn't have done that, because nothing is for certain until it's literally in your blood. So I wanted to know, and she's like, "Listen, many times it's nothing serious. Sometimes it's that they want to go on a vacation." And I'm like, "Come on, don't tell me that." And she's like, "Yeah, sometimes they want to go on a vacation. Sometimes they have to go on a funeral or something. Sometimes they have a job opportunity that comes up and they have to move away from the capital, from Tel Aviv, for example. Sometimes and she got kind of serious when she said that, so I have a feeling it might be that, but I never confirmed this. Sometimes they hear what the procedure is and they get scared. And when she said this, she shut up for a second. She didn't say anything else. And I was like, that's it, isn't it? Like, I thought to myself, that's it, isn't it? Like, he heard about the filgastrim injections for a week. He probably heard about the surgery they have to do, a 5-minute surgery, so they can pull the blood out. Maybe he got scared, and people get scared, and I wanna emphasize that, like, I understand fear. I'm a guy that you don't know, so I get it. But anyway, like, I understand, it's fine. And she's like, yeah, I'm so sorry. So we're gonna have to, go with your mom. And my mom was super happy. I think she was even kind of hoping it was gonna be her, because that sort of gives her like, sort of like this like mother's, like maternal protective instinct control thing, or like she knows that if something if the doctors need something from her, no matter what, she can give it. And like as let's say a donor from Israel or wherever, since it's far away, there's no way of like making sure everything is going okay. So I said it kind of confusingly, but my mom, I think, was happy that she could rely on herself to make sure everything would go well. So yeah, she was kind of glad, and I admit I was really happy because I was completely okay with my mom donating. I knew it wasn't going to be painful. I knew it wouldn't really cost anything. It's not like donating a kidney or anything like that. But I admit I felt kind of betrayed, and even more important, it didn't have to do with me. It's not that he didn't give the bone marrow to me. I'm gonna be honest here, okay? Like, just allow me, like you've always allowed me, dear audience of mine, allow me to just be as honest with you guys as possible. So I'm gonna address my following words to whoever my donor was gonna be, wherever you are, whoever you are. I'm talking to you now. I know that things can get scary sometimes, and you don't know me, you don't know who I am. The only information you probably got from the doctors was that I was a grown man from Argentina. Like, usually, I'm guessing they didn't tell you anything else. They probably told you I had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and maybe they even told you that you were the only one compatible in the whole world, apart from my mom. But medically speaking, you were the only option, the only serious option. We only had one backup, and maybe they didn't even tell you that. And maybe you thought, I'm sure everything is going to be fine with him. Or maybe you were like, don't tell him who I am. I don't want to do this. Maybe you got scared. Maybe you had to go on a vacation. Maybe you got a job opportunity somewhere else. Maybe maybe you just didn't want to. Maybe you found out I'm just a normal guy, a random guy here, and like you don't want to donate your bone marrow, and all of that is fine. I mean, I'm just another guy, and there's nothing in the world is forcing you to do anything. So I don't want to hold that against you. And I'm alive now. Thank God I'm alive. So I'm not dead, and I would never want you to carry the weight of the dead. we have enough burdens as it is in this life. So even though you didn't know what was going to happen to me, hypothetically, if I would have died, I wouldn't want you to carry that weight. But here's where it gets kind of messed up. This disease, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, it doesn't really affect people my age. Usually, it affects either old people in a lesser degree, but more than anything, it affects kids, man. It doesn't affect people my age. So maybe they didn't tell you my age. Maybe they told you my age and you made a decision with that. But if they didn't tell you who I was, then you made a decision to not donate your bone marrow to someone that could have been a kid. You know, a little baby, or a little 4-year-old, or a little 10-year-old, man. Like I really hope you knew that you were compatible with me and not some other kid. Because you know, he could have killed me. And maybe you didn't know this. Maybe they told you everything about me, and I hope to Christ, I hope to God that they told you everything, because if they didn't tell you details about my life and they just said it's a male from Argentina and that's it, and they didn't tell you anything about my age or who I was, if they didn't tell you all that stuff, then it's gonna be really hard. But it's just, I don't know, man. Like, what if I would have been a kid and I died, you know, like. But anyway, that wasn't the case. And I'm sure you had your reasons. And in the end, I wasn't a little kid. I was a grown man, just another, you know, grown person living in Argentina. And although you made that decision, and although, you know, it made things riskier for me, because everything changed. Like when the bone marrow is no longer 90 to 100%, there's a whole bunch of things that I have to do extra, you know, pretty painful stuff that I'm going to talk about in another video. But what I wanted to tell you is that even after all of this, I don't want you to carry this burden. And if you ever watch this video, you know, maybe you're feeling guilty, or maybe you don't give a shit, but I feel it's important to tell you that I forgive you. I don't know if it's my place to forgive you, because nothing happened. Everything turned out okay. But I forgive you. And I hope everything goes well with you. And you don't have to carry any burden for anyone. And I hope you live forever. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say, really. I think I made this entire video because of that. Like, my mom told me not to do it because she's like, you're gonna say some racist crap, man. You're gonna say some stuff that maybe it's okay today, and cancel culture in the future is gonna like eat you up, and they're gonna rip you apart, Mr. Farkas. But I just wanted to say, I wanted to express to the audience just how excited I was. I was excited. I wanted to you know, get some. How do I say this? I was proud. I was happy to, get blood from Israel. I was excited. And it wasn't the thing that it's from Israel. It's a country that I don't know. It's a culture that I'm not a part of. And it felt so warm. I don't know. So anyway, that's the end of the episode. Let's see where this goes. I love you guys very much. See you in the next episode. Bye.